So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay and to a new map, or at least one of the maps that was added after the new patch came out in 0.97 as part of one of the map packs, which have now actually been combined into a single download on the ModDB, and I would highly recommend that anyone who's interested in playing Reforged goes to download the map add-ons as well, because all of them are pretty good, I would have to say, and obviously it does also mean that there's no chance that you'll be incompatible with anyone's lobbies, so that's always a good thing. And obviously when all the maps that are added are of this type, they can be very fun games to be a part of as well. So this is obviously going to be a siege. I believe this map is called Rhudaur, which is, I believe, based on my sort of time spent looking at various Middle-earth maps, I believe it's like on the some southern shores of Cardolan, sort of near to where the border with Linden would be, or at least near to that sort of area, so fairly far west. So it's quite surprising that evil has managed to besiege this particular area, but it's going to be good versus evil actually today, so a pretty law-friendly battle in a way. Obviously some of the factions involved, such as Dole and Roth here, would have to march quite a long way and been exiled from their home to actually fight a battle here, but nonetheless it will be interesting. So there's several ways in and out, there's several sort of intricacies to this map, which I'm sure we shall see as we go along. We'll have a look at the map and its defensive layout a little bit more when we go through the defenders, I think. First of all, we'll have a look at the attacks. It's a 5v3 as well, so it's going to be all for the defenders to do here. We'll start off with this army here, Isengard, commanded by Text to Dane XV1. He's got some Dunland clansmen on the front, which when you're a part of 5 attacking armies, you always have to expect the fact that you're probably going to have to skimp on quality somewhere. But the Dunland clansmen, of course, with their slightly heightened bonus against cavalry, being Dunlanders and spearmen, does mean they have a good bit of utility to try and prevent any sort of sallying out from enemy cav. The mighty Nars Kai are just in behind them, which are a scary sight for any army to face, with how devastating they can be with those armour-piercing blades, or I guess blades is the wrong word for that sort of thing. It's more in common with an axe, really, than a sword. We've got Uruk-hai infantry as well, so a very solid mainline unit that Isengard are able to utilise, so that should be very good for them, of course. We also have the Lert's hunting pack, so the body-piercing projectiles of Isengard will be here today, in addition to the crossbows and the trolls of the White Hand. Some Uruk-hai reavers and some spearguard on the sides, as well as some Uruk-hai pikemen. So overall, this is a fairly small army from Isengard, all things considered. They've certainly dipped more into their quality than they could have. They could have gone for more numbers potentially in a siege like this, which would make life quite difficult for the defenders, to put them under a lot of pressure. But of course in this case, Isengard dipping more into just their sort of better Uruk-hai units here. Then the second army we have on display, yes, we have Scouts of Entertainment. Now I do know that there are sort of various, I've been given a lot of battles recently on these maps, and to be honest with you, I'm just sort of taking the approach that if they get sent to me, I'm using them, because I really don't have time to go pouring through all of the replays. Like, I'm very limited for time. I need to do all of my recordings basically in a single day now. So if I hope that this is fine, but regardless, this is Dunland, and there is actually sort of cause for me to have a look at Dunland, because Dunland are a faction which you can't actually use under normal circumstances. There isn't an awful lot about them that's unique either. They're basically there for campaign purposes, but there is a way you can get them to work in online. The issue with Dunland, though, is that they don't really have the same faction structure as everyone else, so their roster is very limited in terms of what it offers. But they are still functional, you can still play as them, and in a 5v3 it's not really going to matter too much, because it does mean you can pad your army with a lot of numbers. So obviously they've got the Dunman Hunters. They primarily share their units from Isengard and Rhudaur, and they do have, I think, 2 units which are unique to them. Half-Orc Baneguard here, so obviously something that's from Isengard. We have the Dunland clans, and with the armour upgrade, I mean, when you're Dunland, you don't really have a lot of money. You don't have like a ton of elites that you can spend money on, so you may as well bring the armour upgrades into play. Dunlanding Berserkers over here as well. Dunman Pikemen. We have some Dunman Spearmen over here as well as a Catapult just back there. And then this is, this might be their only unique unit actually, now that I come to think of it. It's the Greenway Guards, but they essentially are kind of a unique unit, I suppose, in a way. I suppose that the one they share most in common with would be the Menotar Romen Gatekeepers from Cardolan. They share the same armour model, of course, as the Guards of Orthanc for their crossbows, and then they pull out a sort of hooked spear in melee. So yeah, kind of unique in a way, but yeah, it's something neat for them to use. And then right next to them we have Pharaoh, who's playing as Rhudaur. So Rhudaur obviously going to be quite similar here, a lot of Dunman units as well, although Rhudaur at the very least have got a lot more going for them in terms of their whole roster, like the Rhudaur Swordsman. Maybe a very workhorse unit, very basic, but that's still going to be very useful. in a battle such as this. Some Rhudaur swordsmen over here as well with their hexagonal shields. Some Ettenmoor's troll hunters as well, just over here with their javelins. We also have the Witchram Enslavers, obviously a very deadly unit as well. Dunman spearmen over at this river crossing near to, well, as the river sort of continues to wind off into the distance. We also have some more Rhudaur clansmen, some swordsmen, so going much more for the numbers approach here, Rhudaur, which is good to see from the attackers. Goes to show that they're sort of spreading the responsibilities of the various armies out. Dunman spears, troll hunters, and then back over there, the Franadine Berserkers, multiple HP, very nice of course, as well as a couple of volleys from those axes that they throw before they charge into melee. Then we have another Dunland army played by Artorius. So he too has gone for some upgraded Dunland clansmen on the front line, as you would. Some Dunman hunters over here, some more Dunland clansmen, some half-orc spear guard back here. You can see that obviously they're not supposed to really be used in multiplayer because there's some Silver Surfer models here, which at least lets me know where the officers are at a glance. Lots of Dunlanding veterans, so that obviously is the closest thing they have to line infantry. Well, it is line infantry really, but obviously for Isengard they're a little bit more niche in that they're kind of an alternative to the Uruk-hai Raiders with those axes that they wield. Yes, here we go. This is the other unique unit for Dunland. I was going to say Isengard then. But Dunland, they have mounted crossbowmen that are unique to them, which is, again, something that is very unique, ironically. We have the Greenway sentries with those handheld crossbows. They look like a lot more heavily armoured than mercenary crossbowmen as well, so that should be a fairly useful thing here. And then some Dunman pikemen, and then finally, the one faction on the evil side that would have to march an awfully long way to get here would be Harad, although I suppose it's not out of the question that Umbar maybe just gave them a lift over the seas. Haradrim spearmen on the front, obviously very, very basic. Lots of Haradrim archers and Southron archers to put pressure on the defenders, and then back here, Mahud beast hunters, some upgraded dismounted serpent guard, some trollmen, demons of the desert, and champions of Nefra. And of course, based on the fact that Rhudaur have gone numbers heavy and there are two Dunland armies, the quality core of both Harad and Isengard will come in very handy today. Now then, we will have a look at the defenders, starting off with this little encampment up here, which offers sort of a little back way into where all the attackers are coming from, the little encampment, and that is some Rohirrim forces up here. We can see there's some Riddermark skirmishers hidden, so Master Blast is going to be playing as Rohan. He's got a couple more units around here as well, but I can't see them, so there's definitely Riddermark skirmishers, but there could be some other stuff as well. The rest of his army is over here, within the settlement itself, over here on the, looking at the map from this orientation, it would be on the west side of the river, although I think, based on the fact that so that would be the east side, because I imagine that is downriver, so the sea would be that way, and obviously then that would, yeah, that sounds about right. So Aerod of Aldberg, Red Shields of Erkenbrand, we have some more Aerod of Aldberg, lots of Aerod actually. Let's back in over here, more Aerod, is that 2 units of Red Shields? Interesting compositions. We've got some Westmark spearmen, good for holding the line, very good for holding the line in fact. Westmark infantry, which don't get the credit they deserve, they're a very accomplished unit of line infantry. Over here we have the Westmark Marshals, who should be very much at home fighting some of the heavier units they're facing off against, but a lot of numbers and a lot of lightly armoured numbers at that, so the Westmark Marshals may find themselves in a war of attrition, which is not great for them. The Sons of Eorl are in there as well, Helm's Hammers, and then obviously the mighty Metiseld Guard as well. Not seeing any Shield Maidens, which is a shame because they're very good. Then the Central Army, the player who sent me this battle replay is MSQ2, who's going to be playing as Dole Ramrod today, so obviously the Knights in Shining Armour coming to help their cousins from the west. A couple of units of Parasail Riders, which will undoubtedly try and wear down the enemy as they approach, but they need to be careful. Lots of cheap archers and, more worryingly, those Dunland crossbows. Some dismounted Knights to Silver Swan, Black Swan Renegades, Doran Ernil Pikemen, and Ethelond Halberdiers. So that's a very thick front line there indeed. I imagine most of those are going to have to break up though, otherwise they will just be skirmished down. And then up here on the hill, the rest of his army, so some Tirithea Marksmen, 2 units of them, some Belfalas Marines, and then over here we also have some Ethelond Halberdiers, and some more Doran Ernil Pikemen with the armour upgrades. And then moving on, we get into Ricky Beagle, who's going to be playing as Cardlin, who are technically the ones who I believe would own this settlement. I don't think it would be Linden. We have the Minhiriath archers and sharpshooters, so very good combination of heavily armoured archers, and very nice crossbows as well. Hearthguard of Amon Sul, a nice trebuchet there for defensive purposes. Minhiriath men-at-arms, Thieves of Tharbad, that was Tharbad Warhammer, so Thieves of Tharbad are hidden. Some Minhiriath archers once again, some Warns of Tirngorthad, another unit of Tharbad Warhammer, so Cardinal with a very nice looking army indeed. Dunedain captains, and Minhiriath spearmen. So it makes sense, I mean Cardlin here have got home field advantage. They've got a lot of good units, and the Tharbad Warhammers should be good against the forces of Isengard that are coming for them. But without further ado, I think I will actually make a little cut here, because it's going to take, I think, a little while for the attackers to sort of organise themselves. So I'll make a cut here, and we'll rejoin when the battle is beginning. So I see I needn't have been too worried about the battle taking a long time, with Rohan having such a heavy cavalry corps. You can see the Aelred of Alberg charging right into the Dunlanding clansmen, but that's a risky move to make. He'll clean up on kills against the Dunlanding clansmen, but they will be able to bite back more so than most militia spears. And let's not also forget the support of the archers nearby, as well as these nasty looking Greenway sentries. So that's a ton of evil men pouring over that hill there. And the Aelred of Alberg coming back for another bite of the cherry. They will charge in, but like I said, Dunlanding clansmen maybe not the best target here for the Aelred of Alberg. It maybe would be more preferable to try and send the cavalry around another route, but then again, in a defensive siege like this, it can be quite difficult to escape with your cavalry sometimes, and I feel as though Master Blaster is in the rather unfortunate position that he's up against so many spears, even as low tier as they may be. Greenway sentries also coming in here. Very good to see Dunland in action, even if they're not really designed as a multiplayer faction, and that will be how it remains. There simply isn't enough space on the roster for them to flesh out Dunland's roster, as well as doing both Ered Luin and Dole Rhudaur when the time comes. Meanwhile, Dunlanding clansmen coming forward yet again, taking the brunt of these charges from the Aelred, but they haven't taken grievous losses, and the Aelred of Alberg are starting to bleed manpower a little bit. But obviously, it is worth saying as well that most of Dunland's army is going to be made up of these cheap units, so they will need to maintain their numbers if they are to maintain any sort of advantage. Meanwhile, over here you can see the Parasail riders trying to skirmish down with the enemy. It looks like they actually got hit by a catapult shot based on how closely clumped those bodies are. What are they actually going for here? Maybe the Atomor's Troll Hunters? Maybe not the best idea. Their armour is thick enough and their shields wide enough that they won't be too concerned about taking hits from those Dole Amroth Horse Archers. Now, though, the Parasail riders need to back up, because they are going to get, unfortunately for them, caught in melee against some of these Dunlanders. Rhudaur, it looks like they're going to be leading the way in this particular assault. Speaking of which, though, once again, we're going to have to take a look over here as Isengard going up the hill. These Greenway Garrison archers may be getting a little bit greedy, hoping that Isengard would take their time coming up the hill, but that is most certainly not the case here, as the Trolls of the White Hand chase them down, and they will have a field day teeing off into these Greenway Garrison archers. Back here, Greenway Garrison footmen, spearmen, and Wardens of Tir Gorthad ready. The Minotaur Roman gatekeepers are also here. Best thing to deal with these trolls, though, would be one of the units of Tharbad Warhammers, be able to crack through that Orthanc armour very, very nicely. But you can see here that Scouts is also going to be sending forward his army to come up this way as well. It's a narrow pass, and it does go into Cardland, who look to have the biggest of the defensive armies, but between the numbers of Dunland and the slightly higher quality of some of Isengard's troops, that should be a fairly difficult pass for Cardland to hold, but we'll see if they can get the kills done. Sons of Yule coming in, so Rohan continuing to charge into their foes. Once again, though, it's into militia spears, which is not really ideal for them. You can see they are actually losing a couple of unit models here, which when it comes to losing knights is a real tragedy. Dole Amroth don't have their knights on the field today, I don't believe. Parasail riders trying to come in to cover their retreat. Fortunately, a unit of knights is so strong that militia spears will still take quite a while, even with that anti-cavalry bonus. You can see here, though, that Dunland just continuing to swamp forwards into the settlement, forcing Rohan back, and this is where Rohan's composition will probably come back to bite them. They've gone for an exceedingly cavalry-heavy build, which is not necessarily the wrong thing to do. But it's going to be very difficult to hold any kind of defensive line here against the advancing forces of Dunland and Harad. And obviously this is just the green light for Dunland and Harad to continue to swamp through the settlement. It may be that the high ground over there in the cliffs becomes a sort of holdout for Dole Amroth and for Cardland, and it's up to Rohan to just try and get as many kills down here in the pits as they're able. I mean, they are fortunate in a way here, the defenders, that Dunland's roster is so limited. That is going to be a saving grace, because most times in a 5v3 all of the attacking factions will have some form of quality core. That won't really be the case with the two Dunland armies here, so that is some form of respite for them, but whether that will be enough I'm not so sure. The red shields are still up here. You can see the Rohan, well, the very limited amount of Rohan infantry is over here as well. Bit of raised terrain that these red shields are shooting into. Haradrim archers are coming forward though, and obviously horse archers not really going to be up to much when it comes to trying to deal with this many low tier evil men archers. Meanwhile, can see here the first engagements happening on the front line. The Black Wolds of Dunland, that is another unit they can call on, which is probably one of their best units in melee, to be honest, with another unit they share with Rhudaur. But this is obviously a very thick Cardland front line. This is something that they are very well known for being able to do. They can bring a lot of Greenway units to pad out their line, and then the Wardens of Tirngordad are in there as well. The problem they're having now, though, as you can see there, the bandits from Dunland have moved forward and threw their volley in there. They're going to have to try, and again, because of the prep trait, they're going to have to use some tricky manoeuvres to sort of go backing in and stop them from charging in so they can continue to use their ammunition. But Cardland probably feeling okay about this so far. I think the bandits have already used up pretty much all of their ammunition. The Greenway Garrison archers are firing away. It's not the best angle for Cardland actually because of this little hill here. They're having to shoot over their own men and into this blob. But the most dangerous stuff in the Black Wolds is not really in a position to be shot. And the Men-at-Arms Roman Gatekeepers most certainly don't have a very good shot, which for crossbows of course is a pretty big deal. But Cardland have got enough in the way of archers here that should be enough to give this huge blob pause. Look at this. This is like the old Horton scenarios where there was just like a ton of men just pouring into a choke point. A frame rate killer. But this, I think, it looks like already, to be fair, Dunland's assault is starting to waver a little bit. They need to keep stoking the flames of this assault if they want it to be successful. Meanwhile, how are Rohan getting along? You can see here the Greenway sentries are in position. Rohan do have a front line of sorts being formed. They really don't have a second wave of defenders, so once this infantry falls, that is going to be it. The Metis Guard and the Westmark Marshals are on the front line. Of course, they'll easily be able to kill Haradrim Spearmen and Dunland Clansmen, especially with the support of those red shields over there. But again, it's just going to be wave after wave of these low-tier militia units that they're going to have to try and deal with. And I don't think the Metis Guard was able to utilise their Javelins either, which is another shame. Would have been able to rip a hole right through these units quickly. Rohan's kill count is going to be extremely high in this battle, I have a feeling, just because there's so many of these units which in this case, Rohan's infantry is so far in excess of the quality of what they're facing, especially with the Helmhammers. Like the Westmark infantry and spearman, much better than like the standard Dunland veterans. But again, it's a matter of numbers here. There are so many Dunland veterans. They're also being backed up by pikes, which is not good. Like Rohan, if they're going to defeat these pikes, probably going to need to use their archers. But of course, Rohan always were going to be in a pretty difficult spot here. But we can also see that their ambush has been sprung. The Riddermark cavalry leading the way. The Trollmen of Harad caught cold, really, as the Riders of the Fold are back here as well. The Riddermark skirmishers. And this is Harad's quality, this is. So if Rohan can kill off a lot of these Trollmen, that's a big win, because you've got to remember the Dunland armies aren't going to be fielding a lot of quality. The Rhudaur army hasn't even brought a ton of quality either. So that would just leave Harad and Isengard with like a decent chunk of elites that they can utilise. And if Rohan can deal with them, then more power to them. Unfortunately, this unit of Riddermark cavalry has maybe gotten a little bit too greedy in going after the champions of Nefra and the demons of the desert, and is almost going to get themselves broken. The Greenway Guards are running away as well with their crossbows. But this does give Dunland and Harad something else to think about. There's now a lot of Rohirrim cavalry in their backlines, and now they're kind of trapped in here in this main thoroughfare, really, as Rohan continue to hold them at bay, although again, like I said, Rohan may have a significant quality advantage individually here, but like the numbers are just going to be too much. With the pikes in tow, helping out all of these Dunland veterans, it's going to be very tough for Rohan to hold this line for any length of time. There's also the support coming in from the Dunland archers and crossbows, Haradrim archers as well. Meanwhile, over here kind of similar, only the Westmark Marshals and the Metis Guard aren't being buried under manpower just yet, so they're having an easier time of it, so they should be able to kill off more of these Dunlanders as they surge forward. Keep an eye on that Rohan cav force in there. You can see up here that Rhudaur are now punching right through the middle, which is good, because again, Dole Roth has kind of abandoned this front line over here for the time being. They've just shifted some of their infantry units back. There's still the Sons of Yor which can be used, but obviously Rohan at the moment are going to have to micro a huge amount of cavalry to try and keep their hopes alive, and he's going to need to keep those Dunland spears from getting the drop on him, but he doesn't. He's going to turn around and charge into them. Probably not the best of charges, but that's still going to be enough to give the Dunland spearmen something to think about. Meanwhile, over here you can see that this is going to be the biggest grind fest on the map. Cardland obviously standing in the way with all of their spears and pikemen, and so far Dunland and Isengard not really making any sort of ground up on this particular choke point, but they could. They have a lot in reserve, obviously, with all of the Dunland numbers and all of those Uruk-hai. Ooh, dear, oh dear. That is some body piercing there, so we don't want to get too close, otherwise that will cause the frame rate to die, and that's from the Wanderers of Nimrodel here. So obviously they're going to get tons of kills. Let's back away from that before the game decides to die. We have the Trebuchet as well from Cardland, which, to be fair, the Trebuchet is pointing in the right direction. As soon as Rohan's limited infantry line starts to waver, that Trebuchet could do some real damage. The Greenway Guards, meanwhile, getting charged down by the Riddermark skirmishers, more designed with fighting other cavalry in melee with those big axes, but of course the massive cavalry often does most of the work off a charge. You can see there a lot of those Greenway Guards falling by the wayside. A lot of these half-orc Bane Guard also getting charged into. Dunman Hunters, another nice clattering charge there, a huge chunk of them being dealt with, but just look at the Rhudaur army in the background, look at the size of it. Pyranodyne Rangers as well, so Rhudaur at least do have more quality than the Dunland forces. There you can see the Cardland Trebuchet opening up. The Rohan force is starting to really look thin on the ground. The red shields are over here, charging into the Mahout Beast Hunters, trying to prevent them from charging around and surrounding the Rohirrim forces, but that's not going to work because the champions of Nefra are now over here, so Rohan's days within the settlement are numbered, but the Rohan player would have been well aware of that going into this. I would assume they're trying to go after this infantry block. That would definitely be the best target to go after over here. The Parasail Riders from Dole and Roth are here also. Over here, still, I mean, they're not really committing too much over to this side, Dunland and Harad, so that's allowing Rohan to pick up extra kills on the Metis Guard and the Westmark Marshals, cleaving through the Haradrim and Dunland units that have been sent here. You can see now as well, there was some form of unit burying deep into the Rhudaur lines. Tex 2 Dame has sent over some warg skirmishers as well to maybe prevent any sort of cam action coming this way. There goes the first Marshal's bodyguard from Rohan, so I'd assume that's the general. Trebuchet, I think that was that a bit of friendly fire there? It must have been. The Rohan forces are now routing. The Aelred of Aldberg getting chased down by the champions of Neferat through the streets. That's not great for them. Dunland veterans heading over to here now, and I'd imagine, yeah, you can see the upgraded Serpent Guard are on the way over, the Greenway Guards and the Mahout Beast Hunters. So now with the crossbows, the Javelins, and a slightly higher tier of melee infantry coming over here, this little island of Rohan resistance will also be taken care of, I would imagine. This Rohan force over here, though, Riders of the Fold, charging around, as well as some Eastmark Horse Archers, more Eastmark Horse Archers. I mean, most of the stuff back here was Horse Archers. There's a case for saying maybe a unit of Aelred of Aldberg should have been over there as well, just so they would have had more bite off the charges. But I mean, to be fair, by the looks of things, they seem to have done a pretty good job at inflicting some pretty heavy losses out here. There's a lot of bodies. I mean, obviously the Rohirrim horsemen are among them, but certainly Rohan, like when you're microing this much cav and trying to maintain a defence as well, it is a difficult task. You can see here the Trollshaw axe throwers from Rhudaur coming across to try and take yet more chunks out of the Rohirrim cavalry. And succeeding. I mean, if the Rohirrim don't stop these guys by charging into them, it will be pretty harsh on them. Or just shoot them from afar. Trollshaw axe throwers are not particularly good at absorbing missile fire. The Cardland Trebuchet is firing away, but not really to particularly good effect. Like a few Attenmore's Troll Hunters, a few more Southrons. Not really the kind of game they would have been going after, I'm sure. Over here, you can see here some Midhiriath archers shooting down the hill. The Rhudaur clawsmen, swordsmen and clansmen leading the way. I think this Trebuchet should probably wait for more opportune targets. Trebuchet ammunition is very limited now that its accuracy has been increased. But maybe he just wants to pressure Rhudaur into coming forwards. But that's a risk. Meanwhile, over here, still, you can see now that Cardland's starting to waver a little bit with their manpower, losing quite a lot of fighting men on the front line. So Dole and Roth have come forward with some Halberdiers and some pikemen of their own to continue to make Isengard and Dunland's trek up the mountain a difficult one. And obviously the additional AP of those Halberdiers will be of particularly good use against the Uruk-hai infantry, although I did see in the background there a unit of pikes on the way forward. Uruk-hai pikemen, which will be a good answer to that as well with their additional range. Meanwhile, I think over here, yeah, you can see now, Rohan, obviously this was always going to be the ultimate fate of Rohan with how little infantry they brought. They have ultimately been swept aside by Dunland and Harad over on this side of the river, so this half of the city really has already been claimed by the forces of evil, but they've certainly been made to work for it. There's a lot of dead over here, and there is still the small matter of what cavalry Rohan has left over here, although I'm not sure how much more use they're going to see. These Eastmark Horse Archers trying to finish off these now very depleted Trollshaw axe throwers. Another nice little catch there for Rohan. And then there's also the Eastmark Horse Archers over here, Riders of the Fold. So yeah, nothing really other than Horse Archers that are left. And with those Haradrim Spearmen plugging up the gap as well, I don't know if Rohan are going to have all that much more joy. I mean, no, yeah, there's pikes in there as well. They definitely won't be able to do much. But I'll give Rohan credit. I mean, they've been incredibly aggressive with all this cavalry. Whether that will be a good thing or not remains to be seen. We'll learn how effective that was in the late game when Harad and this Dunland army are called upon to try and help take that hill that Dole, Amroth and Cardland have now parked most of their army up on top of. There are a few Dole, Amroth forces back here, including some Perineal champions that are hidden, as well as the Haven Knights that are actually hidden, so I didn't actually see that. So there is another unit of Knights in the Haven Knights, melee Knights, but still they are the tougher of the two, and I ultimately do prefer them to the Arathirim after the infamous rout that the Arathirim subjected me to. Meanwhile, the Trolls coming through here now. Do Dole, Amroth and Cardland have the ability to stop this leak? I mean, they've sent in more units, but they need some more infantry up here. They have got the Haven Guard. I mean, if they play their cards right, well, it will definitely, I think, be the end of the Trolls of the White Hand, with the Haven Guard over here, with the Tharbad Warhammers. But they need to be careful here, because they need to make sure that this line doesn't buckle under the pressure that they are now being subjected to. I can't help but notice, though, out here, the attackers have maybe gotten a little bit too far ahead of themselves, because they're being attacked. Their whole assault really is being flanked from the side by a unit of Tharbad Warhammers. They need to try and deal with them if they are able, because as it is, they're sort of funneling into, they're basically making the choke point even narrower for themselves, which is not really what you want to do as the attackers. This may be a situation which just developed by accident more so than anything else, I'd be willing to bet. You can see now, I mean, here the Men-at-Arms are on the way over, as well as some Black Swan Renegades to plug up the potential gap. And as more men come up the hill, you can see more. There's Uruk-hai crossbows, the Trollshaw axe throwers. I'd imagine that what they're going to try and do is dislodge this unit of Tharbad Warhammers first and foremost, and then re-engage on the front line. There you can see Javelins being thrown into this front line. I mean, we're more or less at the halfway point. It's not, 225k frames is not the longest for a 5v3 siege battle, but then based on how Rohan have played and based on how aggressive the attackers have also been, there have been no hanging around in this siege battle so far. It's been all action pretty much right from the start. Belfast Marines and Tirithea Marksmen are now firing away. You can see they're also being returned fire upon by some Southron Archers and Franadine Rangers further down the hill. Now you can see on this front line, Rhudaur Swordsmen and Dunland Spearmen making up the vast majority of this front line, as the Dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan and Ethelond Halberdiers attempt to halt the advance of Rhudaur from getting any further up this hill, which in terms of quality they should, but of course there's a lot of range support coming in as well. Several units of archers from both Rhudaur and Harad. Dunland are now making their way across over here. Obviously there's that sneaky little ambush force from Dole Amroth, which we may very well see later on. What's going on over here? A routing Eastmark Horse Archer, so he somehow made his way all the way over to here. I don't know if there's anything left of the Rohirrim cavalry. There's some Riders of the Fold over here. To be fair, still poking and prodding away at the attackers, doing what he can. Doing whatever he can to help the team, which is good to see from Rohan. He still has his first Marshals Bodyguard as well, so if the attackers fall apart in one place, or he could wait and then join with the Haven Knights in the late game and really become a tour de force, especially seeing as they're multiple HP Lancers. They're a little bit better equipped maybe to be charging into infantry in the late game than the Haven Knights would be. Still some Parasail Riders as well, so still some decent potential cavalry action as the fight continues. Let's go and see what's happening over here. Yeah, you can see now over here, finally, the Tharbad Warhammers. A huge wave from Isengard and Dunland coming forward once again, and that should be enough to finish them off, which turns it into a much more straightforward line battle once more, but it's a line battle which I still think the defenders have got the better end of so far. Oh dear, hang on a minute. That there is more body-piercing arrows, and it is indeed once again the Wanderers of Nimrodel, who have probably already gotten themselves an ungodly amount of kills, because they're carving right through Isengard, but especially Dunland, who don't have, most of their roster is made up of more lightly armoured infantry from Rhudaur and Isengard. Meanwhile, these Southron archers probably having a pretty good time of it themselves, trying to go after the unshielded units that are making up that Dole Amroth front line. First Marshals Bodyguard trying to stop the Rhudaur swords, and actually the Parasail Guard did manage to escape, so Rohan do still have a unit of infantry, more to the point, a unit of very nasty Javelins, and they're trying to shoot, I think, the Atomwars Troll. No, actually the Witch Realm Enslavers, that would be an ideal target. Rhudaur don't want to be losing their Witch Realm Enslavers cheaply to the Rohirrim Javelins, of course. Rhudaur, when it comes to Javelins, Rhudaur are the very best that are on offer as a faction. Demons of the Desert probably the best as a unit, but Rhudaur have got a better selection overall than the Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters trying to return fire in there. The Parasail Guard, I don't know if they want to retreat or not. I mean, they're cutting it very close. I think they are just going to sort of sit here. The question now is, will Dolan and Roth move down the hill to help the Parasail Guard out? I think they are. I think those dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan are going to join with them. They'll probably need the support of the Halberdiers as well. Indeed they are. Good bit of battlefield awareness that from Dolan and Roth, and they're firing point blank now into the Rhudaur swordsmen. This is going to be a lot of damage, and quality-wise, this is definitely going to go in favour of the defenders once again, but again, that's never been in doubt throughout the entire battle. But look at the amount of manpower that's just going to be streaming towards this front line, as if that wasn't enough. Morale is going to be put under pressure as well. The Serpent's Fangs are here, another one of those quality units that Ramrod has brought. Obviously the poison arrows going to be very, very useful here. Meanwhile, this assault looks like it's on the verge of breaking up. In fact, it pretty much has, with these units broken and fighting to the death, but Rhudaur are going to be committing forward more swordsmen to the front line just to keep this assault going. Most of the damage is going to be brought from ranged units. Reforged Javelins, another one of those more high-quality Rhudaur units. Again, to make up for the discrepancy that the Dunland factions bring. First Marshals Bodyguard. This is risky because, I mean, they're going to get caught here, and I can't imagine the Reforged Javelins wouldn't take the chance to try and kill off these Rohirrim Lancers. Let's see what's happening over here. Rotting meat. Maybe trying to give the attackers something to think about before they even reach the front lines. And to be fair, Isengard and Dunland over here, I think, just aren't able to find any way through the joint defence of Cardlan and Dolan. You can see there, that's a big break now, and Tharbad Warhammers are just chasing further back. They're going to be able to get into the Snaga skirmishers, and they're going to rout very, very quickly. And I can't help but wonder, there's the Lurtz hunting pack. I mean, I think the quality units from Isengard were a little bit further behind, as were the Greenway Guards. The closest thing Dunland have to a quality unit. The Black Wolves were sent in immediately, but of course they didn't last too long on that front line, to be honest, under that kind of ranged scrutiny. But yeah, I mean, this assault here from Isengard and Dunland is under real danger of just falling apart completely, and they need to keep up the pressure over here, because this is a lot of resources that I don't think Rhudaur and the other Dunland army, as well as Harad, can afford coming after them. That was an artillery hit from somewhere. There goes a general. That could have been Harad's or Rhudaur's, I think, because I think both the Witchram Enslavers and the Champions of Nefra are in there. Indeed they are, so that's a lot of quality on this front line. All of a sudden, this front line is looking pretty grim. You can see down there the Dunland Catafalque from Scouts getting into a good position, but it's not ideal because it was still over here, and I think he's trying to shoot right down the line, but it's easier said than done because of the way it's definitely the right thing to try and do, but I'm not sure whether he can get the angle that he wants based on the geography of the map. The Belfast Marines moving over, and they're going to give the Dunedain Rangers a chance to carve right through this attacking area. Dole and Roth, they're continually just pushing the forces of evil down the hill now. Artorius' Dunland army trying to hold the line. There. That looked like a pretty good hit. Well, it looked better than it was, I suppose. It only clipped some Belfast Marines. But as I was saying, Artorius' Dunland army, you can see Pharaoh's Rhudaur army now. The Branadine Berserkers are moving forward. The Demons of the Desert are here. Again, they don't necessarily have the best of shots. The Thieves of Tharbad are going to be throwing their projectiles into melee, and then obviously getting in there. They've got a lot of skill, not the best armour of course, but good defensive skill. Still a lot of troops to try and burn through there, although it is looking substantially less scary than it was just a moment ago for the defenders. The defenders still holding firm. Over here, meanwhile, well, maybe here the defenders got a little bit too big to their boots. They sort of charged forward, lost a bit of their defensive shape, and there's still a decent amount of Scouts' Dunland army and the Isengard army to kill off, including of course the Greenway Guards, and there's still Nazkai down here, and the Lurtz hunting pack. Lots of crossbows. Those Tharbad Warhammers once again sort of making themselves a real nuisance, not allowing the attackers to get set in a nice clean attacking formation, attacking them from the side. Nasty AP damage coming through there, and they're just continuing to just push through, and they're going to be going after, I think, one of the ranged threats. There's the Uruk-hai crossbows over here. No, they're routing. They bit off more than they could chew there. Greenway Guards now firing away. Snugger skirmishers also doing some damage. And Dunland and Isengard may very well break through here, but the Wanderers of Nimrodel just continually firing. Hearthguard, 1st Marshals Bodyguard somehow managed to escape from that mess without breaking. Meanwhile, the Dunedain Rangers, they're in a perfect position as well. They've got themselves overhanging the cliff, and here we go. So Dole and Roth have sprung their trap. The Perineal champions have revealed themselves, but perhaps more worryingly for the attackers, the Haven Knights have revealed themselves, and they really have no answer to them now. These Haven Knights are going to be able to charge around pretty much uninterrupted in the back lines of these armies, and the Parasail champions, this is still a worry, obviously. Very nice unit of heavy swordsmen that causes fear is the last thing the attackers really want to be dealing with when they're being put under this much pressure, especially with factions which don't necessarily have the best morale. And you can see that obviously some forces from Dunland here running for the hills, Half-Orc Spear Guard are running away. Essenmore's Troll Hunters still back here, the Greenway Guards still trying to fire. Still this front line holds, the Dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan. They're not the best at killing things quickly, but they're a very nice centre for the Dole Roth army because they're tough to kill with that multiple HP, and they do buff nearby morale, which does wonders for the Dole Roth front line, honestly, because Dole Roth's infantry is okay, but it's certainly nothing special, certainly not up to the level of their neighbours over in Gondor. Meanwhile, you can see over here that Isengard and Dunland finally making some inroads over here. The Cardland front line is now very much on the verge of collapse. There's only a few Minotaur Roman gatekeepers and Thieves of Tharbad really in the way. I mean, Hiriath sharpshooters will also be called upon in melee very shortly, pulling out those maces. Shooting into that clump of Uruk-hai. Hearthguard of Amon-Sul trying to reform themselves, although I think another unit of archers, I think this is beyond another unit of archers at this point. I think this defence is probably lost. I think they need to start thinking about setting up another defensive line, which, to be honest, the defenders may not have the luxury of doing that. All of their troops are pretty much engaged from this side, so this could be a key moment. If the attackers are going to win, they need to crack through that defence quickly and come to the aid of their allies over here who are desperately struggling. You can see here that there was a lot of quality committed to this side of things, and the Rangers, the Javelins, and the Dole Roth infantry have really done a number on them, and the Parasail champions now, with that fear-causing effect they have, you imagine it won't be long in the end. Most of this stuff is broken and fighting to the death. The only stuff that isn't is the General's Bodyguard stuff, which is like locked morale, basically. Witch Realm Enslavers will do more damage, but yeah. Here come the Black Swan Renegades, so crushing victory over on this hill for Dole Roth. Over here, meanwhile, there is still more to fight their way through over here. They should still be able to manage it. Catafalque is gone. There you can see the Dunedain Rangers firing right through these armies, the Greenway Guards and Hranadine Berserkers being hit by them. Still trying to respond in kind with the Haradrim archers, but these cheap archers, they're just not going to be able to do the damage quickly enough for what the forces of the evil men will clearly want in this battle. Haradrim archers continuing to do their thing. Some Belfalas Marines, depleted as they may be, heading over here now. Parasail Riders and 1st Marshals Bodyguard. It may be that they have to charge in and out with cavalry over here just to prevent this force from continuing to move forward. But again, there's not much manpower left for the attackers over here. Like, they have been... Like, I imagine the Rangers are going to be a major source of kills here, but also Javelins, just the basic archers. The Rohirrim cavalry has also been a constant annoyance for the attackers. But also... quality of units, like the Tharbad Warhammers prove themselves to be difficult to dislodge from awkward positions. Wards of Tir Gorthad right in the middle of those defences. Dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan. The attackers just didn't have the same level of quality, a huge amount of numbers in their armies, but here it looks like quality may very well overcome quantity. Hearthguard of Amon-Sul are still here, of course, with their morale buffing effect. And they won't be the easiest unit to bring down either, even on their own like this. They might not necessarily get a lot of kills, but they will hold up the attackers for even longer. And of course, the more volleys they can get off, the better. Still there's Haven Guard over here as well. Here are the Haven Knights. So victorious over here. I think feeling fairly confident about their chances of defeating the attackers over on this slope. A lot of this might is going to go back towards Isengard and their Dunland underlings. Some Hashari Stalkers revealing themselves, so Harad not quite out of things yet, revealing a unit of Rangers here in the late game. A power play indeed. Some Greenway Guards there, South Front Archers, Dunman Hunters also firing away. Very, very nice. Trying to do damage here to the Dolan front line, but Dolan, heavily armoured and shielded for the most part, going to be able to deal with that. And even, like, I did notice that pretty much all of their pikemen also have the armour upgrade here, so even they are slightly more resilient than they would otherwise be. Hearthguard now into the front line, the Dunedain Rangers and the Haven Guard are backing them up, so in come the Nazkai, and to be fair, the Nazkai, if there is a unit which can kill off the Hearthguard of Amon Sul quickly, it's going to be them. But I think Isengard and Dunland have left it a little bit too late to break through here and try and turn this battle around. I think the defenders are onto a winner here. That is a rather magnificent moustache that man has. Trollshort Axe Throwers now being forced to fight in melee. Still Rohan's cavalry just getting in the way and now being backed up by the heavily armoured Knights of Dole Amroth. The Wanderers of Nimrodel are broken and fighting to the death. That's something for the attackers. I'm sure that they have a lot of kills. We are watching this battle from Dole Amroth's perspective, so we'll be able to see that. The Lurtz hunting pack firing away with their own body-piercing missiles, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think they're trying to kill off these Parasail champions, but like I said, probably not going to be sufficient. There is the Hearthguard of Amon Sul. Lurtz hunting pack are fighting in melee now. They're pretty good in melee, to be fair. They're also being backed up by those Greenway Guards. Those big old crossbows that they use. What's going on over here? Hashari Stalkers, I think, still trying to move around, still trying to get a good shot. There's Demons of the Desert over here. There goes the Rohirrim General. I think Rohan are probably not going to live to see the end of this fight. If they do, it'll be only with a couple of unit models. Javelins being thrown into this patch of Dole Amroth resistance, doing more damage, to be fair. And, you know, over here, the defenders, I mean, they should still win over here. The Parasail champions are in here now. They've got pikes still. There's not a huge amount of quality on this front line other than the Hranadine Berserkers. The rest of it is made up of hunters. But I don't know, I mean, the defenders aren't exactly stocked up on units at this point. Got another unit of Black Swan Renegades heading back over here now, though. There goes the Isengard General, so taking revenge for the loss of the Rohan General. The first Marshals Bodyguard charges into the Nazkai, and that's going to be the end for them. The Haven Knights charging into the Greenway Guards, which is a risky place for them to be with those nasty looking spears of theirs. I don't know, the attackers still potentially have something here. Like the Black Swan Renegades are coming over here to maybe try and shore up this defence, but the Nazkai are going to receive some support now. It may only be from Uruk-hai crossbows in melee, but it's better than nothing. Hearthguard of Amon Sul still firing away. What are those Greenway Guards even firing at? Is what I want to know. Well, those Haven Guard on the front line, there's only 10 of them left. There goes the Dole Amroth General. Could that be a key moment in the fight? Probably not. Well, you never know. The Black Swan Renegades should be able to keep their morale together. We got to kill off those Trollshort Axe Throwers for sure. And there's nothing left, so this is everything from Isengard and Dunland. And I have to say, I think Dunland, well, the Greenway Guards are still there, but other than that, they're still just hanging on by the smallest thread, those armies. Meanwhile, over here, Dole Amroth continuing their forward momentum. They're pretty much the only defender left with significant manpower. Cardlan and Rohan are both pretty much down to like individual men at this point. So I mean, it could go pear-shaped still. I mean, if they still have ammunition here, like those Hashari Stalkers could be the difference. And look over here, like those Demons of the Desert and those Mahud Beast Hunters, or Beast Masters, yeah, Beast Hunters, sorry, really did a number on them over here. So still, Harad could be the match winner here just because of the units they've got left. Like the Demons of the Desert, do the defenders really have an answer to them in melee anymore? Because I'm not convinced they do. Belfalas Marines, I mean, it could be here that maybe they just don't have quite enough to get over the line. There's still those Haven Knights over there. Greenway Guards getting attacked. There's still Hearthguard, there's still Rangers. Greenway Guards trying to get into a position to use their crossbows, because to be fair, if they're not able to use those crossbows, the first Marshal's Bodyguard, in conjunction with what's left of the Dole Amroth Infantry over here, will be enough to kill what's left of Isengard. To be fair, there's still the Lurtz hunting pack. Not the weakest unit in melee, but here are the Greenway Guards. What sort of shots are they going to be able to get off? I'm not sure how much ammunition they have left anymore. Thinking about it a little bit too long though. Well, defeat is almost a certainty for the Black Swans. I imagine that's because the Lurtz hunting pack is shooting them literally at point blank. And as we've already seen, armour, well armoured or no, Rangers are still going to be able to exact a heavy, heavy toll. What's going on over here? A lot of forces for Dole to try and cut their way through. That is a rout from Dole, and I think that may be the ultimate turning point here. I think the attackers are just about going to be able to get over the line here. For the longest time it looked like the defenders were, for the most part, having things their own way, but here you can see that Harad and Rhudaur have just about been able to pull this out, and you know, with those Rangers, yeah, like I don't think that they're going to have enough here, the defenders. I think they are going to fall. Very close though, and again I'm sure that, you know, this is like the most Pyrrhic victory I've ever shown, because just look at the carnage. You could probably fit all of the surviving members of the attacking army into one building at this point. You didn't need to take a city over. Greenway Guards continuing to fire away. Hearthguard of Amon Sul also doing the same, but I mean at this point it's just going to be a valiant last stand from what's left of Cardal and Dole Amroth, I think. Perineal champions running for the hills. And again, I think both sides had their issues they had to deal with in this match. I think obviously Dunland's lack of high tier units is one thing, but also the fact that Rohan's army was maybe not tailored for this situation. They still did very well with it, and it may have just been a choice to make the battle more interesting on the part of the players. But ultimately they didn't have enough infantry, and that other half of the settlement was taken really very, very quickly by Harad and Dunland, and that allowed them to carry the momentum to sort of really boxing the defenders in. It looked touch and go for a while, but the attackers are just about going to have enough. And good thing too, because I mean they really don't have much of quality left. I mean they've got the 2 units of Greenway Guards, both a bit battered and bruised. Very depleted Franadine Berserkers and Demons of the Desert. The rest of their army is pretty much made up of sort of lower end, out of ammunition archers, which is not really what you want in the late game if you're trying to sort of really pull out a victory, but in this case it is going to be enough. Perineal champions running away. Haven Knights, the Black Swan Renegades looking like they're routing. They're now getting shot in the back while being in melee with the Lurtz hunting pack. That's no bueno for them. And this is ultimately going to be the end of days for them. There go the Black Swans. I think the Haven Guard, I believe, are a lock morale unit, so they will just hang around in melee and fight forever as the Greenway Guards continue to battle them bravely in melee. But the Dunlanders, victorious. There go the Hearthguard. This is going to be the end, and having a look there, very, very close indeed, within 3%. And it goes to show a lot that a fairly decent chunk of men, even if it is out of ammunition archers for the most part, this is only 3% of the attacking armies, which goes to show how enormous the attacking force was to begin with. Isengard was really the only one that didn't go for outright numbers, and in the end proved to be a good decision in many ways. Dole Amroth getting the most kills there. Obviously they had sort of battles, you know, Rohan and Cardlin were much more focused on each side of the field, even if Rohan did transition to just being supporting with their cavalry later on. Dole Amroth obviously with a lot of archers. Having a look at the attackers, Isengard and Dunland having the most luck, which again doesn't surprise me too much because Isengard, their quality would facilitate that a little bit more, and Dunland had obviously their crossbows, which were able to get into position a little bit more easily than Artorius' were. Obviously a nasty hill that he had to contend with going uphill into the remnants of Rohan and obviously the phalanx of Dole Amroth. But yeah, I think well deserved in the end, because I think the attackers did exactly the right thing. They knew what their strengths were. They knew they could absorb a ton of casualties, which they did. I mean, just look at the amount of losses they've taken. That's over 1,000 that they, over 10,000 rather, they ended up losing in the conquest of Londia. But yeah, I think deserved. I mean, the defenders, I think going into this, I think Rohan probably knew that their army was going to be a little bit difficult to use sort of effectively. They did well, I think, but maybe, like, you know, having some of the Aerid of Aldberg on the outside of the settlement instead of inside, maybe that could have been a difference maker, because they would have been able to clean house a little bit more easily than the horse archers and the Riddermark skirmishers they had out there. But then that's a deployment thing, not a play thing. I think Master Blaster did very well considering his army was quite difficult to use. Now though, let's have a look and see what did the damage for Dole Amroth. Only 95 on the Haven Guard, but then they were only really committed towards the end. Lots of units breaking 100, a few even breaking 200, but one unit, unsurprisingly, breaking 1,000. We have 1,165 kills for the Wanderers of Nimrodel, obviously doing a ton of damage to the Dunland army of scouts and obviously the Isengard army as well. 509 kills on Dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan is not half bad though, especially seeing as, you know, overall in melee there are units of that type which are better than they are. Black Swans, you know, mixed fortunes for them. Like, you know, they were really there just to shore up the line, and towards the end when they were really getting committed in, that was when the defenders was starting to fall apart. The Haven Knights did okay considering they were only committed for a little while, and one of the Parasail champions did amazingly well. One only got 20 kills though, so differing fortunes for different units here. But yeah, big thank you to MSQ2 for sending this replay, and that was a lot of fun to watch. Obviously I'm a big fan of seeing these like newer maps and actions maps that we haven't seen before, and that is going to be a bit of a theme I think with at least this battle and the next two preceding it, because I did get sent like a clump of battles I think from the newer map packs, which are of course, like I said, now downloaded into one. So if you're interested in playing, I would highly recommend them because it will make sure that you're compatible with everyone. So yeah, big thanks to all the players involved. Big thank you to MSQ2 once again for sending this one to me. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will join me for whatever is next.